Previously, I made a video where I went over what if the MCU had the opposite rights, meaning they had the rights to the X-Men, Spider-Man, and Fantastic Four from the beginning, but they did not have the rights to the Avengers. In this video, I'll be looking at that same world, but instead of Marvel, I'll be focusing mostly on Fox Studios, since they did have the rights to the Avengers. In the previous video, I established the franchises that were sold off by Marvel in the 90s, but who exactly bought each one? A big one is Sony Pictures, potentially the focus of another video we'll see. Sony purchases the rights to Doctor Strange and Wolverine. They eventually lose the rights to Doctor Strange, and made a deal with Disney involving Wolverine that allowed them to use him in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You might have already seen that in that video if you've seen it. Universal bought the rights to The Punisher. They made a movie starring Thomas Jane in 2003 called The Punisher, followed by the MCU's Punisher Warzone starring Ray Stevenson. Universal's Punisher rights are a bit weird. They don't have the full rights as Marvel can use the Punisher in the MCU, but they also seemingly can't have their rights naturally revert to Marvel. Instead, Universal has to sign off on a Punisher movie made by Marvel, which is why Marvel didn't make one past 2008. They also own the rights to Moon Knight, but never did anything with him, and his rights eventually reverted to Marvel. Lionsgate Entertainment eventually bought the rights to a lot of Marvel characters, including some who would go on to appear in the MCU, but very soon after lost the rights to all of them, with the exception of Iron Fist. Iron Fist released in 2004, starring Paul Walker, followed by a reboot movie starring Shawn Ashmore in 2008 called The Immortal Iron Fist. Eventually, the rights reverted to Marvel. The first Marvel movie after the film rights were sold off was a Luke Cage movie starring Wesley Snipes that was released in 1998, followed by a sequel in 2002 and a third movie in 2004. Marvel later regained the rights to Luke Cage later on. With all this, the only TV show created by these franchises was Luke Cage the series in 2006, meant to be in the same world as the Luke Cage movies but starring Mike Colter instead of Wesley Snipes. And that brings us to Fox Studios, the focus of this video, which brought out the rights to more franchises than any other studio. Everything else that's left: the Avengers, Iron Man, Captain America, Thor, Hulk, Ant-Man, Black Widow, Hawkeye, Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D., Inhumans, Runaways, Guardians of the Galaxy, Shang-Chi, and everything that could be considered under one of those umbrellas. They also share the rights with the MCU for Scarlet Witch, Quicksilver, and the Skrulls. Fox would take a bit of a different approach to what Marvel would take later on, more so keeping the franchises separate, more focused on doing trilogies and not a cinematic universe, and also with horrendous continuity. Fox starts a lot earlier than the MCU, meaning we're getting the Avengers a lot earlier, which also means that I'm going to have to recast most characters because there isn't an age-appropriate real-life casting. A movie that would go on to be considered the beginning of the modern age of Marvel movies, The Avengers, releases in the year 2000. The Avengers will put its focus primarily on Captain America as we see things from his perspective. Steve Rogers, played by Matt Damon, is taken out of the ice after 55 years to find a world that has yet to fully move on from him. Back in World War II, Captain America fought an organization named Hydra. He defeated their leader, Red Skull, but as their saying goes, cut off one head, two more shall take its place. To combat Hydra post-World War II, an organization called S.H.I.E.L.D. was formed, and a special task force composed of enhanced or exceptionally skilled individuals was created. This was the Avengers Initiative, and it's been around for a while, currently led by David Hasselhoff's Nick Fury, but the current lineup includes Hawkeye, played by James Marsden, Black Widow, played by Angelina Jolie, Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man, played by Eric Bana, the Wasp, played by Winona Ryder, and the only character I'm not recasting, Iron Man, played by Robert Downey Jr. RDJ was kind of going through it at this point in time, but in this world, he'll simply get over it a bit earlier. Tony, meanwhile, starts out as Iron Man a little bit younger. Hulk and Thor are not included, both because of the restrictions on the budget in a 2000s movie, and because of Fox going for a more grounded world. But also because of those reasons, and to follow the costume trends of the X-Men movies, the Avengers wear mostly black, Iron Man's suit is entirely practical, and while Captain America will have a suit from the beginning, it'll be very dark and muted, and he will never ever wear a helmet. Hydra is led by Baron Zemo, played by Christoph Waltz, the grandson of Cap's secondary archenemy from World War II, Heinrich Zemo, with other inclusions like Baron Strucker, Madame Hydra, and Alexander Pierce. The Avengers defeat Zemo and deal a blow to Hydra, but they remain active. From here on out, the X-Men movies would reuse their first villain a lot, but Magneto is on another level to basically every villain the Avengers have, so I won't be sticking exactly to that. From the beginning of this movie, Hank and Janet are dating, but at the same time, Tony also has a crush on Janet and they flirt a little. Because of the general idea of the Hulk in the early 2000s requiring so much of the budget, and because of his larger popularity than the other Avengers at the time, Fox would decide that while it's impossible to make an Avengers movie with the Hulk in it, they can make a Hulk movie and make it separate from the Avengers, at least for now. In 2003, we'd get Hulk, a movie starring Edward Norton as Bruce Banner, and one that'd be the same as the real-world Hulk movie, with Hulk's origin chased by the military, Betty Ross as the love interest. The only thing I'd change is adding the Abomination as one of the villains. Hulk would have disappointing reviews in box office and wouldn't warrant a sequel. It would, however, get a spin-off that I'll get back to. 2003 also gives us Avengers Assemble, a direct sequel to the Avengers that very much expands the world. 3 years after the first, the Avengers are faced with a threat greater than they were created for, as the Norse god Thor, played by Heath Ledger, comes to Earth to warn of his brother Loki, played by David Tennant, coming to Earth to take over. Alongside Thor, Falcon is added to the roster, while Mockingbird, played by Jennifer Morrison, is seen a lot in the background as a SHIELD agent and a potential recruit. Iron Man's role is minimalized, this being the early 2000s, they weren't really able to truly pull him off, his suit is way less cool, and so Iron Man wouldn't be as popular. Captain America, meanwhile, is pushed even further to the forefront. He is the Wolverine of this universe. Loki brings an army of frost giants from the olden realm of Jotunheim. Together they attack New York, while Loki takes control of a few Avengers, leading to hero versus hero fights. Eventually, the Avengers assemble back up, defeat Loki, and as Thor decides to remain on Earth, they add easily their most powerful member yet. This movie is even better received than the first and makes even more money, so obviously a third one is on the way. Back in Hulk, Bruce's cousin, Jennifer Walters, would have had a small role played by Jennifer Garner. Now, in 2005, she'd get her own spin-off movie, She-Hulk, a movie showing Jennifer's origin and transformation into a Hulk, for which Bruce Banner will appear in a small role. Jennifer would then contend with life as a lawyer who occasionally hulks out, and the villain who rivals her strength, Titania. But this movie would do even worse critically and commercially compared to Hulk, and so this franchise would die. That same year would see the release of Inhumans, which would have the same cast as the TV show, but with anyone who would have been too young at that time replaced. So Medusa is instead played by Lena Headey, and Crystal is played by Kate Mara. The movie takes us into the isolated community of superhumans living in the fictional city of Atalan, introducing us to their society and rules just before things fall apart, due to the rebellious actions of Black Bolt's brother, Maximus. The good Inhumans eventually defeat him and things go back to being fine. Aside from the cast, the movie isn't too well received, but does well enough to warrant a sequel. Then comes 2006, and with it, the final movie in the original Avengers trilogy, and while the first two are well received, this one is not. Avengers Endgame will attempt to adapt the Infinity Gauntlet storyline way too early and in just one movie, as opposed to what the MCU did in the real world, which is 2. For whatever reason, Falcon doesn't appear, but War Machine is introduced, played by Terrence Howard. Thanos, played by his original actor Damien Poitier, and created practically with makeup and a suit, comes to Earth to complete his Infinity Gauntlet and get his 6th and final Infinity Gem. He already has the other 5 as of the beginning of this movie. This is a version of Thanos who is basically just pure evil. He wants to kill half of all life just because he thinks it'd be fun, since what they did in the MCU would take too long to explain, and the death of it all is way too crazy and way too out there for them to include here. Thanos is joined, however, by his daughter Nebula, played by Zoe Saldana. She's more like the comics, just a blue woman, not a robot. To start, as he comes to Earth, Thanos immediately kills Thor, who is not included due to a scheduling conflict with Heath Ledger. The Avengers assemble to stop him, with focus obviously put on Captain America as per usual. They then find out that the remaining Infinity Gem that Thanos is looking for is in the hands of a woman named Carol Danvers. The Infinity Gem was owned by her late husband, an alien named Mar-Vell, who was mentioned as a former member of the Avengers who passed away. After years of proximity to the gem, Carol has developed incredible powers. Becoming Miss Marvel, she joins the Avengers to fight Thanos. Along the way, Nick Fury is killed by Thanos, and Thanos eventually does get his hands on the space gem and snaps his fingers, killing half of all life. Hank Pym steps up here, tricking Thanos into a fair fight. Hank gets the Infinity Gauntlet for himself. Hank snaps it again, bringing everybody back, but he is driven mad by the power. Thanks to the Wasp distracting him and Hank subconsciously wanting Captain America to do it, Captain America was able to get in close and kill Hank Pym. Cap then takes the gauntlet for himself and uses it to both kill Thanos and destroy the gems for good. It's then revealed that Hank Pym actually had a backup body that he uploads his consciousness into. They could later retcon this into being a robot body and a hint towards Ultron, which we will get to. The two storylines of Thanos coming to Earth and the origin of Ms. Marvel do connect better than the Dark Phoenix and mutant cures in X-Men Last Stand, but it's definitely way too much for one movie. What's more the issue for this movie is that they attempted a story and villain that just wasn't realistic to be handled in 2006. Thanos didn't really look that good. After this original trilogy, the present day will be left alone for a while. We'll get to it. In 2007, we'd get the sequel to the Inhumans, Inhumans Rise of the Kree. The movie would introduce Lockjaw and reveal that the Inhumans were created by an alien race called the Kree, ordered by their ruler, the Supreme Intelligence. Ronan the Accuser, the most powerful Kree enforcer, comes to Earth to recruit the Inhumans in the Kree's war against the Skrulls. When the Inhumans rebel against this and kill Ronan, they incur the wrath of the Supreme Intelligence, who comes to Earth himself. He, however, is seen as just a big cloud. Despite the very easy connection that they have here to the Avengers movies with Marvel and Ms. Marvel, Fox never crosses the Avengers and Inhumans over. There is a crossover in development at one point, and that also includes the Hulk, but that movie does not get off the ground. Beginning the prequel era of Avengers movies, 2009 gives us Captain America: The First Avenger, and because Captain America is the equivalent to Wolverine, his origin takes place in the 1940s instead of the 1980s for Wolverine. All of the prequel movies, one after another, actually take place in chronological order. This was meant to be the first in what was supposed to be a series of origin story movies focusing on individual characters. They planned on making a Nick Fury movie next, but well, this movie kind of killed that. Captain America: The First Avenger ends up being pretty bad somehow. Imagine the real-world Captain America: The First Avenger, which fast forwards through the first half, telling Cap's origin story of going from a scrawny kid who wants to join the war effort to Captain America, before then going on a mission with his best friend Bucky, in which Bucky actually immediately dies. All of that is in the first 10 minutes. The main focus is instead on the events leading up to him being frozen in ice, primarily focusing on Captain America going out on his own on mission after mission, place after place, teaming up with person after person to track down the Red Skull. On his journey, Captain America meets a lot of the other superpowered individuals who helped fight the Nazis during World War II, including that era's Black Panther, Azuri, played by Sterling K. Brown, and Namor, played by Tenoch Huerta. The movie introduced Wakanda and Atlantis to the Avengers universe, as we, up until this point, didn't know they existed. Then there's Jim Hammond, who in the comics is the original Human Torch. These movies would have the rights to Jim Hammond, but not the name Human Torch, as that is more associated with Johnny Storm, which Marvel Studios has the rights to. So instead, he goes by Toro, the name of his sidekick in the comics. He's actually played by Paul Bettany. This all leads into a final climax where Captain America finally tracks down the Red Skull, but soon learns that Bucky Barnes is actually still alive and being used as the brainwashed soldier of the Red Skull known as the Winter Soldier. This version of the Winter Soldier, however, talks a lot. Eventually, Captain America is forced to kill his friend Bucky, and then he kills the Red Skull as well, eventually ending up in the ice exactly like the real movie. Along the way, Heinrich Zemo also cameos. At this point, with technology making it possible, they merge Hulk into the Avengers movies, doing so in 2011's The Avengers Initiative, showcasing the origin story of the Avengers. But from here on out, the continuity goes all out of whack. Set in the 1960s, the movie tells an origin story that is very different from what previous movies told us. We're introduced to Nick Fury Sr., played by Samuel L. Jackson, the father of the Nick Fury of the original movies and the actual founder of the Avengers. It all begins with Bruce Banner, played by Mark Ruffalo, turning into the Hulk after a failed super soldier serum experiment and going on a rampage. General Ross does his best to stop him, but things are dire, so Nick Fury recruits enhanced individuals from across the globe to form a team specifically meant to stop the Hulk. Similar to X-Men First Class, the lineup here is a bit of a weird one, made out of a couple unknowns, less prominent characters, as well as a villain. Captain Marvel is played by Jude Law and said to be a defector of the Kree Empire. Photon is played by Tiana Paris and got her powers in some sort of accident. Quicksilver is played by Evan Peters and is said to be the son of the Wizard, a speedster from World War II. Having inherited his powers, Quicksilver is American, has a younger sister we never see aside from one deleted scene, and obviously has no relation at all to Magneto, a character that does not exist in this world. The rest of the team all got their powers from offshoots of the super soldier serum. Wonder Man is played by Nathan Fillion and was expected experimented on. Hellcat is played by Rachel Taylor and deliberately volunteered to be experimented on. Goliath is played by Eddie Gathegi, but is killed by the main villain, and Taskmaster is played by Chris Pratt. Taskmaster, being a comic book villain, is obviously going to turn against the Avengers, but because Chris Pratt becomes super popular and really bankable in the following years, mostly because of Jurassic World in 2015, Fox seizes the opportunity of their original contract to keep Taskmaster around past the point of it making any sense. He will fit into the plot of the next movie, but beyond that, the fact that he's around and then a member of the Avengers is kind of ridiculous. In this movie, the Avengers would team up with General Ross and his own anti-Hulk group, the Thunderbolts, including Whiplash, Ghost, Absorbing Man, and Batroc the Leaper. Eventually, it'll be revealed that Hulk's rampage was set off by the leader and that all of Ross's agents, as well as Taskmaster, are all working for him. The Hulk regains control, joins the Avengers, and they take down both the leader and the Thunderbolts. The Avengers formed. Hydra then comes out of the shadows they've been in since the death of the Red Skull. From here, the Avengers movies will each take a decade apart, with the idea of leading into the original trilogy. That idea was not well executed in the end, even though we did get two pretty great movies. This movie in particular is fantastic. The next one is even better. Returning to the present day in 2013, we get Captain America: Man Out of Time, focusing on Steve Rogers as he's finally allowed to breathe. With the original trilogy, he went straight from World War II to the ice to the Avengers and then conflict after conflict. After Endgame and being forced to kill his friend, who he does not know is actually still alive, Steve tries to find his place in the modern day. He wears the suit from Winter Soldier while teaming up with the Falcon against Crossbones, along the way losing his shield. In the end of the movie, Steve is approached by Tony and Hank, telling him the world is in grave danger. A deleted scene shows Cap receiving a new suit which has the feathers and the scales and even a helmet, but it was cut. Then comes 2014 and Avengers: Age of Ultron, crossing over the past and future and doing it really well. If this was a real movie, it would be better than the real world Avengers: Age of Ultron, and certainly have a more fitting title. Jumping around 10 years into the future, it'll be revealed that all the way back in the 1970s, a young Hank Pym, an 18-year-old recent college graduate at the time, in his vast genius and ambition, created an artificial intelligence using his own brain patterns, which would then be called Ultron, which he wanted to use to help the world. Ultron immediately started going bad, so Hank destroyed him and pivoted to Ant-Man. Unbeknownst to Hank, Ultron survived and evolved over the course of 40 years, waiting for the right moment to strike. This came when his creator died. Ultron then created a robot army and took over the world, overwhelming the Avengers and creating an apocalyptic wasteland. With the Avengers on the run from the Ultron army, Tony and Hank managed to invent a time machine, which works by making it so that whenever they go to also becomes the present, happening simultaneously with their current present. With their ranks having dwindled and Ultron's army closing in, they send Captain America, who somehow has his shield back, it's not explained, to the 1970s, while the rest guard the machine. If it's destroyed, Cap will be sent right back to the future, and all hope would be lost. Cap's goal is meant to be to just kill Hank Pym again, this time before he can create Ultron, but he remembers something that Hank once told him that he thinks might be a better way. After the promising and hopeful note the Avengers Initiative left off with, the 1970s are far bleaker than expected. Most of the Avengers either died or left, leading to the Hulk also going crazy again and being locked up. Around this time, Taskmaster was hired for a mission in which he unleashed the Hulk, which caused a rampage that led to the death of Hank Pym's parents, right as Hank was creating Ultron. This led to darker brainwaves, as his true motivation was that Ultron would be powerful enough to kill the Hulk. While the Avengers of the future hold off the Ultron army, Cap teams up with Nick Fury, Wonder Man, and Quicksilver to plot how they could stop Taskmaster, and eventually they succeed in doing so. Hank's parents survive, and the future is saved. Or rather, that's what you would expect. In a twist, it turns out the future doesn't change yet, because the person who hired Taskmaster, Baron Zemo, hired a backup in somebody named Spymaster. Hulk is then unleashed on the world while the Ultron army closes in on the future Avengers, even killing a few. To help save the day, Wonder Man sacrifices himself by fusing to Ultron, turning him into Vision. With Wonder Man's power enhancing him and with a new heroic personality, Vision manages to calm Hulk down, creating a new version of Hulk who is not just a mindless this rage monster. Vision then defines the following half a century, with things generally being more colorful after him, and Hulk being turned into a full-on hero by him, and therefore a long-lasting Avenger. Cap is then sent back to the future, finding a peaceful, normal world where everyone is alive, including those who died in the original trilogy. Captain America's presence in the past leads to Taskmaster being hired to search for him, but this storyline is completely abandoned. 2015 will give us Inhumans, a gritty and more grounded reimagining of the Inhumans, but it ends up being really boring and really bad. It's hated by everyone, does extremely poorly, and ends the Inhuman franchise. Before it comes out, they actually greenlit a sequel and even a planned crossover with the Avengers, but these all are completely cancelled. After a Black Panther appeared in Captain America: The First Avenger, Fox decided to make a Black Panther movie, releasing in 2016. This is meant to be a counterpart to Deadpool, but honestly, there aren't really any characters that could have fit all of Deadpool's unique roles, fitting into the Origins Wolverine movie being comedic and a fourth wall breaking character, and worthy of a franchise. Ultimately, I decided to scatter Deadpool's roles across the Fox movies, so She-Hulk broke the fourth wall, the Winter Soldier was Deadpool's equivalent in Captain America: The First Avenger, and now Black Panther will be the Deadpool equivalent going forward. Set in the present day, Black Panther follows Azuri's grandson, T'Challa, as his father T'Chaka, the current king of Wakanda, is killed by a villain named Claw. T'Challa becomes the new king and new Black Panther and goes after Claw, eventually even killing him. Along the way, T'Challa breaches international law and two members of the Avengers are sent after him, War Machine and Echo, played by Don Cheadle and Aloka Cox respectively. In the end, they all end up teaming up against Claw. The Avengers movies didn't really reuse villains nearly as much as the X-Men movies did, so instead of introducing a new villain, let's reuse one with the counterpart to X-Men Apocalypse. Also in 2016, Avengers Under Siege. In this revised version of the 1980s, the Avengers have become a strong unit with the current lineup and have recently recruited a few new members, alongside those who appeared in Age of Ultron, which are Nick Fury, Ant-Man, Hulk, Vision, and Quicksilver. Although Quicksilver immediately dies in the beginning, they've also recruited the Wasp, played by Maya Hawke, Thor, played by Chris Hemsworth, who came to Earth a lot earlier, and Iron Man. Tony is only 20 years old and played by Tom Holland. He's often mocked as Iron Lad rather than Iron Man, but Tony did actually become Iron Man in his 20s in the comics, so it's not that crazy. What is crazy is that no one seems to have aged at all, even from the 60s, which was 20 years ago, and they've kind of forgotten that Fury is meant to have an adult son at this point. Captain Marvel returns in a cameo and mentions that he has a girlfriend named Carol. Baron Zemo, meanwhile, puts together the Masters of Evil, mostly comprised of characters who are heroes in the comics: Black Widow, played by Florence Pugh, Hawkeye, played by Dacre Montgomery, Tigra, played by Karen Gillan, Enchantress, played by Sophia DiMartino, and Graviton, played by Adrian Pasdar. Hawkeye and Black Widow obviously switch sides, Tigra dies, and Enchantress and Graviton prove to be the real threats. By the end of the movie though, both of those big threats die alongside Baron Zemo, who dies a lot earlier in this timeline compared to the original. As previously mentioned, Fox took advantage of Chris Pratt's immense star power. It worked with the plot of Age of Ultron, but here they kind of just said screw it, let's make Taskmaster a full-on superhero and Avenger. He also doesn't really need to wear his helmet most of the time. This movie confirms that there is an Infinity Gem on Earth. Behind the scenes, they then confirmed that the next Avengers movie will be trying to adapt Infinity Gauntlet again. There is also an end credit scene that teases King the Conqueror, but they never do anything with that. Captain America cameos seen in ice, and the events of this movie are what eventually allow him to finally be found, albeit not for another entire 15 years. Speaking of Captain America, his weird trilogy that each takes place in a different time period and maybe different timeline, but also gets better with each movie, comes to an end in 2017. Rogers is set around a decade after Cap's return in Age of Ultron. Steve has aged and his serum is slowly wearing off. Maybe the Avengers were destined to die because even after changing the past, almost all of them were killed anyway. Steve, wearing the suit from Infinity War, teams up with an also aging Nick Fury as they learn of a super soldier serum outbreak worldwide, leading them to Arnim Zola, who has uploaded himself into a robot and is attempting to revive Hydra. Fury dies along the way while they find out that Arnim Zola used a clone of Steve to manufacture the super soldier serum. This young clone, combined with the DNA of Arnim Zola, is named Ian Rogers, aka Nomad. By the end, they defeat Zola, but Cap dies, and it's signaled that Ian will be carrying on his legacy. Rogers can be kind of considered the true ending to these series of movies. They do continue from here, but interest in the prequels have completely died. The iconic portrayal of Captain America is gone. All that's really left is Black Panther, because the first Black Panther movie did really well, but that's not really enough. This series is on its deathbed. Black Panther: Wakanda Forever releases in 2018 and shows T'Challa settling in as ruler of Wakanda, just as he's challenged by a man claiming to be his cousin, Killmonger. War Machine and Echo appear again, this time in slightly smaller roles, as the story focuses on T'Challa being ousted from the throne and then teaming up with Namor to help get him back, which he does in the end. Namor has not aged since the 1940s, because I guess he just doesn't. In 2019, Disney purchases 20th Century Fox, meaning Marvel Studios regains the rights to the Avengers, Inhumans, and everything else. This adds to the feeling of the Fox Avengers series dying out, which does not help their upcoming 2019 release. Infinity Gauntlet, later renamed Avengers Infinity Gauntlet, is the final Fox Avengers movie, and the final Avengers movie not set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. And somehow, it's an even worse adaptation of this story, this time set in the 1990s. 30 years since the events of the Avengers Initiative, and nobody has visibly aged. Nick Fury is meant to be in his 90s at this point, Bruce Banner in his 70s, Taskmaster in his 60s, and Hank Pym in his late 30s, but everyone looks like they've aged maybe a couple of years, like the normal amount of time the actors aged between 2011 and 2019. This version of Thanos is played by Josh Brolin and created using CGI. Thanos arrives yet again after his final stone. Vision is taken out of commission early because he's probably too powerful, and Taskmaster is killed early on because they can no longer afford Chris Pratt. From there, things go as expected. Thanos gets the stone, snaps his fingers, is overpowered or tricked, and the snap is reversed. This version, however, focuses on Iron Man and Thor, and ends with Iron Man's death and Nick Fury's retirement. The once beloved Avengers movies, even if they were always uneven, end on arguably their worst outing. I mean, I wouldn't know, I've never seen it, and most people haven't. It flopped really hard. The same goes for the final 20th Century Fox Marvel movie, Cloak and Dagger. With the same cast as the TV show, Cloak and Dagger is a low-budget horror movie showing Cloak and Dagger's origin story. Two teenagers from very different backgrounds find themselves burdened and awakened to newly acquired superpowers while growing closer together. They then fight the villain Despair. Despite their vast library of characters to pick from, Fox only made 2 TV shows over the course of these 20 years, both airing 2 seasons between 2017 and 2019. Hellstrom is exactly like the real Hellstrom, except way better. It's apparently fantastic. The Runaways is exactly like the real show, but only 2 seasons long. They both take place in their own separate universes from each other and separate from the movies. Along the way, many Fox Marvel movies would enter development but would get cancelled, like the aforementioned Nick Fury origin movie, Inhumans 2, and crossover movies between Avengers, Inhumans, and Hulk, but also a Quake movie, a Hulk reboot, Namor, Maximus, Winter Soldier, Guardians of the Galaxy, MODOK, Black Widow, Thor, Crossbones, West Coast Avengers, and Iron Man. And that's it, the messy, uneven series of the Avengers Fox movies. It spearheaded the modern Marvel movie, gave us some absolute bangers, but also a lot of trash, consistently awful continuity, and went out on absolute whimpers. The second MCU saga in this world is actually not meant to involve the multiverse, but rather the cosmos, meaning they won't be connecting this series to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. There will not be a Black Panther 3, also because the main actor died, and these characters will simply be introduced into the MCU either really late or retconned in to have been there the entire time.